Alright, so after several requests, finally making a video, actually talking. In this first one, I'm gonna be talking about mixing tips I wish I knew sooner as a producer. And if you don't know me, I'm Viom. I'm playing the piano for over a decade now. That's how I got into music. And I'm making sound kits for now 2 years. Make sure to follow me on Instagram because there's a Christmas gift sound kit coming out from my side. But enough talking, let's get right into the video. Alright, so for the first tip, I want to talk about the importance of panning, but especially stereo separation. And before I even start with the tip, let me actually play you this intro from this beat before and after adding stereo separation and panning. So yeah, as you can hear, it not only sounds more high quality and the overall intro is more wide, but you're able to hear more details. And why you're able to hear more details is what I'm about to show you right now. Alright, so what I basically did there in the difference was just some basic panning with these knobs right here and especially Shaperbox. What you can use for panning is Panman, Shaperbox 3 or a free alternative Pancake 2. Yeah, just go with what you like the most. I use Shaperbox right here, and if you're going to use a panning automation plugin, the most important thing with panning is, in my opinion, that you don't have a lot of melody layers that pans the same way. Otherwise it not only sounds like you're panning the whole melody, but also the reason why we pan just goes away. We want to separate the layers from each other so you can hear the details. For example, I have this first main melody that pans every 4 bars left to right like this. Then this transition you hear at the beginning, just every half a bar. And then this background vox you can hear every other bar. And now most importantly, stereo separation. For stereo separation there's this knob right here. You can see the percentage of the sound being separated at the top left corner. And also important for the stereo separation is that you don't want more than one sound being separated in the same amount. Meaning this one should be, for example, 10%, then the next one 20, then 30, and so on. You can of course make the difference bigger if you have less melodies, meaning you can also do 10%, then 35 and then 50 or something like that. That will just make sure your stereo field is really completely being used. For example, in these kind of intros where you have a lot of layers, you need this a lot. Otherwise, if you have a lot of layers going on, they will sometimes even clash. Or the worst part, the listener won't even get to hear other layers if you don't properly separate them in the stereo field with panning as said and the stereo separation knob. And I always tell these producers, if you want your sound or your bass, especially your basses, to sound a little bit more wide, then use chorus, stereo separation, or use bassline. It's actually free. What this basically does is making the frequency range you can choose right here with the knob, either mono or more stereo. But first and foremost, also don't use the plugin called Wider. I mean, I just wouldn't recommend it because there's better options with more control and a better output. And let me actually pull up a new project so I can showcase this properly with, for example, this plugin called Ozone Imager. The cool thing about Ozone Imager is that you can separate the frequencies you want to make more mono or stereo and adjust it differently from the rest of the frequencies. So you can make the low end, for example, in mono, then it will gradually get more wide, if you like so. And I would rather recommend something like this than a plugin that makes your whole sound more wide or more mono. The same thing applies for ProQ3, but we don't use it as a regular EQ. We will use the side harmonics in this feature. The side harmonics feature gives us the option to play with the stereo field and boost specific side harmonics, basically making it more wide or making our frequency range more mono, like this. So if I would turn everything down, it makes the whole sound mono. Because I'm basically removing all the side harmonics, you know. Also meaning if you want our frequency range to be more wide, then you can boost it. So for my master chain I use for years is soft clip, of course, on the default settings, but also the limiter, which I see barely anyone using. So if I would remake the same master preset, I would pull up soft clipper and then the limiter adds a little bit of gain, around 1 to 2 decibel, turn this down a bit, and really important, this ceiling should be not applied because the ceiling pushes down your mix, especially when the iterator is playing and it kind of feels squashed at this point. And what you see here peaking, that's usually the iterator and the kick, and it's kind of getting cut right below 0 decibels. I really like using Uberloud recently on my master. There's so many ways you can make your beat sound different with this one in terms of how hard it will actually hit. So yeah, I just like boosting a little bit high end and the mid section and turn this to around where the 808 ends at 200 to 300. And Uberloud also got this built-in clipper, which I put to around 15%. And for explanation, Uberloud is like a dynamic multi-band processor. As you can see, it's split to 3 bands with some very decent mastering features. You can even put this to push or stress, but I think that's a little bit too much. You can also go to 2-band or just having 1 knob, but of course you have way more control with 3. And now for the EQ on the master. I don't know what it is, but if you kinda reduce the gain at 190 Hz around this line right here, then the low end instantly has more space. And in case you're wondering why my 808 hits so hard, it's because of regular boost, EQ, put this to cut, or you can use the envelope, but make sure to actually stretch out your 808s if you do the envelope. The basic stuff, I think all of you guys know this. Also a little bit of out on this one. Sometimes I see kind of producers making the rolls really loud like this, or like this. And actually it has to get turned down because the transients of the hi-hats overlap if you make rolls, so it's automatically louder. If you don't want these kind of spikes in your hi-hats if you make rolls, then a compressor would work, but in this case just turn it down, it's alright like this. And if you watch my cook-offs before, I stack a lot of claps and snares and layer them. Sometimes I even use 2 or 3 hi-hats, and then I put like a wave shaper sometimes, or a fruity pulse distortion. Kind of put this down like this, turn the mix down, to make your hi-hats kind of more aggressive. But for personal preference, you can of course play around with the distortion. But it's just about making sure the kick lines up with the 808 in terms of the transients. So this is a kick I picked, which doesn't go well with the 808. As you see, the kick and 808 are fighting for the low end, kinda. This is also a kick that doesn't work with the 808 at all. Even if I turn it down, it just doesn't sound good with the 808. But for example, this one hits. Also make sure your kicks are not too loud. I sometimes hear beats where the kick's like this or like this. It's way too loud. Not because it's necessarily clipping, but you know, it's just standing out in the mix and it's way too loud. And for panning of your drums, as you guys maybe know, your hi-hat should be on the left side and the open hats usually are the right side. But if your open hat is hitting with the 808 at the same time, kinda hits more if it's in the center. So let me actually go to this part. So if the open hat is way too far to the right, doesn't hit the same, and the open hat doesn't feel glued to the 808, which you want at these kind of drops. And yeah, that was it with the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I will leave a link in the description to the sounds I used in this entire video. And yeah, see you in the next one.